Well, good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending the very first annual Kamloops Summit on Opioid and Cannabinoid Research right here in Kamloops, BC. Very grateful now as we shift gears to now more of the personal impact, learning about the stories in our community, spoken through the lens of people that are on the front lines, people that every day are making the difference between people that are affected by problematic substance abuse and those that are seeking a way out. I'm very, very grateful to introduce our next guest. Bob Hughes is the Executive Director of Ask Wellness. Ask Wellness is one of the most incredible organizations I have ever had the privilege of knowing. Ask Wellness is working on a solution for people that are homeless, people that are street involved, people that are suffering, that are addicted, that have a lack of some of the basic human needs that we take for granted each and every day. Bob is complemented by an incredible staff of amazing people, an incredible board of directors, and an unbelievable number of volunteers who assist and help so that Ask Wellness can help meet the needs of housing, assisting people to find ways to come from the streets to a safe place where they can be warm, where they can have access to dignity once again, to be able to have their own space, something that they can call their own, and a hope for the future that there is a transition place, a real meaningful change from a place where people might feel trapped and without hope to a place where people once again can dream about a better life and a better future. And so I'm very, very grateful today to have Bob come up on the stage here. And he's joined by two gentlemen that I've met today, John Boiffard and Randy Tayes, two wonderful individuals who have agreed to come today and really show you where rubber meets the road and help to put to page some of this incredible research that we've been privy to this morning, that we've had the privilege of being able to understand. We now get to see what that looks like when it's translated into human terms. So please join me in welcoming Bob, John, and Randy.
Let's try
check,
that.
check.
How's that? Is that better, guys? We're good to go. So, yeah, as I said, my name is Bob Hughes. I do feel like I'm under the light, and if you need sunglasses with my the top of my head, I think Michael's got some for you. I wanted to just give a little bit of an idea of what we're hoping to talk about today is a little description of our organization, Ask Wellness Society, and then take a few minutes to spend some time with John and Randy. And both of these gentlemen have worked with Ask Wellness Society and have, I think, stories that are very, very important for today's discussion in terms of understanding the role of cannabis in moving from a place of having a really harmful relationship with various substances to being part of community and kind of finding their path back. So one of the things that I think I've heard from the talk so far by a number of people, and Terry Lake, bless his soul, spoke about the efforts by the province to join between harm reduction efforts and recovery. And I think that this is one of the most important places for us as an organization and as a community and obviously as a province that we need to explore more fully. The idea of harm reduction, I think people have had a great deal of understanding about it in the healthcare field, and most of you are in that area, is you understand efforts with naloxone, we know about needle distribution, we know about overdose prevention sites, but we don't know a lot about how people truly get to a place that they would define as recovery. And my background comes from working in the addictions field largely for about 25 years. And what I've noted in the field of addictions is the great divide that exists between harm reduction and defining recovery. Back in 2005, when we had the first real run of methamphetamine problems in our society, and in particular for youth, I was part of the Phoenix Center, and the Phoenix Center was a fairly conservative organization that worked with withdrawal management, doing detox, and then engagement into either outpatient or off to a residential treatment program. But what we found then, and I'm delighted to say that Denise Carr, who is here in the audience, was part of this, as well as Jeff Connors, is we tried some innovative links between harm reduction and what treatment would be considered. And that program at the time was called Meth Kickers. And what we did is we provided a day program for primarily young people that would be between the ages of 15 and 24 that had identified, and their families, of course, were, and support people were overwhelmed by what they were seeing with their young person going from, at that time, the language was still about starting with marijuana and then moving to other harmful, harder drugs. And at that time, and we still live that today, is the impacts of methamphetamine. So crystal methamphetamine as being primarily the substance that was being used. So that model that we tried was to encourage youth to look at not just all of their substances that they needed to stop, but to target the stimulants that were causing the greatest harm. So you can imagine 2005 where the language was, if you're an addict, you need to abstain from every substance to be successful. To being able to engage youth in saying, if you wish to continue to use cannabis, if you wish to continue to take mushrooms, LSD, even alcohol, the goal of the program is to not use stimulants. And we had from youth that were not interested in doing day programming and committing, we had youth that were immediately interested in engaging because it was what they wanted to do. I bring that up not because of where we're going to go on our focus today around cannabis and opiates and the current addiction crisis, but to invite people to consider that the difference between harm reduction and recovery or treatment is really just simply a historical divide, that our greatest challenge now is to let people define what is recovery and what is treatment. So I'll talk a little bit about Ask Wellness and where we've been in that kind of journey, in that we have an organization that's about 150 people. We provide street outreach services, so as you can imagine, we were on the front line back in April 2016, and before that, recognizing that Houston, we had a problem. We had individuals that were, at the time, very familiar with using opiates and obviously had engaged with our services around harm reduction to gain access to clean needles and various other harm reduction tools. We're coming in and saying that, hey, I use what I normally would use in terms of opiates or heroin primarily, or what they thought was heroin, and would come in and say, I woke up in the phone booth about 3 hours later than since I used. So we started seeing that kind of canary in the coal mine, and that is what I think a grassroots street level organization does, is highlight, like Sarah Blythe, highlights what is emerging and begins to come up with a response. So we heard that and started to basically bring that information up to the health authority and to our partners to say, we have a problem. So it's through that street level service that we really became deeply involved in trying to come up with a response to the opioid crisis. We then, with our housing inventory, we have upwards of 500 apartments across the region that provide everything from housing first, so your gateway into housing, through to second stage housing, which our gentlemen here I'm going to talk with in a few minutes have been a part of, right through to healthcare programs, traditional addictions, abstinence focus. We have a male house that is for 7 men that are living and choosing to live in an abstinent lifestyle. And I think it's important for us to consider that right now it isn't one size fits all, but we need to come up with every possible solution, and using cannabis as an exit drug is, I think, one that is just the beginnings of our dialogue. So we have the traditional mental health and addictions housing that is abstinence driven, and then we have employment programs that get people back into the workforce through their journey. But what I'd like to do in speaking today is to introduce our my two colleagues and friends. We work together. They've been come through the journey with our organization, and I think are probably the most important voices in this discussion. So I'm going to just I have 3 questions for these gentlemen, And please acknowledge the fact that these guys, I don't normally get up on the stage that often, but these guys definitely don't, and they've had to persevere through the last 2 hours. And if we go over 25 minutes or 20 minutes, please feel free to taser one of them, not me. So my first question is just basically, tell me a little bit about your experiences with substances and where your life has taken you in this journey. So first is my friend John Boiffard. He works at one of our buildings providing some support to people in a housing first facility, and John has been with us in this community and working with this population and being part of the community. And I think that's another important thing is that the line between people who have lived addictions, as we know, and those who are helping is sometimes very, very thin. And so we are here together. So John Boiffard, wonderful man, and then I'll introduce Randy in a second. So John, would you tell me a little bit about your background?
Hello. Okay. To qualify myself there, as they would do in AA, I was drinking an alcoholic for many years. For many years there, and I found no means. Alcoholics Anonymous. Many programs. I went into alcohol recovery and they weren't working for me. They really weren't. But I always had marijuana as a side thing with me and never did drink, never did smoke that much heavy like I am now because the alcohol took up most of my life. And I pretty well told myself when I wanted getting away from it, wanted to go into recovery, that I was going to use marijuana. I was going to start smoking it much heavier and convincing myself and believing that it would help me stay away from the alcohol. Well, I've been sober now 25 years without touching the stuff, and it worked. And I couldn't come to a point in any of the meetings, AA meetings, to be able to say that. I've got 30 days. I got 6 months this time, which was the most over the years. But I do credit marijuana for giving me that one push to be able to help, the assist, to be able to stay away from the marijuana, stay away from the booze. It allowed me to not be in the moment, even though I'm so intensely in the moment. When you smoke a joint, it does do that, but it allowed me to let go. And any anxiety that I was having, which was one of my issues with the alcoholism, was my anxiety from a young age. And marijuana, it soothed the anxiety. It allowed me to just let go. That's one way of how it helped me with my anxieties. And so, all in all, marijuana, I do give full credit to helping me quit alcohol.
Thank you, John. My next friend to introduce is Randy Tayes, and Randy's journey is one that he has been part of our addictions program. Came from, and I think he'll share kind of the background of how challenging his life has been very involved with our addictions program and helping people to feel like they can make that journey from being basically homeless without a sense of community. And we really deeply believe in our organization that peers, lived experience, I think is a much better term. People with lived experience have a very, very important voice in what we do and how we do it. And Randy for many years was involved in preparing he was making some great breakfasts. He definitely gained a lot of weight at the time, and we was like, okay, man, you're eating our fridge. But Randy's journey has been quite incredible, and I'm just so happy he's here today and is so alive. So Randy Tayes.
Hey, I'm Randy. Okay, this is different. My background, I come from a hillbilly background, so our family was pretty rough. I left at the age of 14 on my own, and right from the start, I was right into anything that was powder or anything, everything from A to Z. I didn't know whether it was coming or going. My idea of quitting drugs was to quit one to go to another. Then, when was it? 5.5 years ago, I was on the highway hitchhiking. And I got stopped off here for the night, and then I heard about this ASH program through Ask, and went through it and was clean for about 4 years, 9 months, until about 6.5 months ago. There was something missing in my rapport or something like that, but I fell off and went into the speed mess, whatever you want to call it, garbage, whatever you want to call it. That's what it is. 57 household products fell underneath the sink. And I got to the point where, how could you say, it had control of me. And the only way I could think of was the last straw, and that was I asked the guy for a joint. And that was the start of my last recovery bit now, which is about 6 months. And I don't touch booze. I don't touch any of the chemicals anymore. I find marijuana, to me, balances everything else. I mean, it's probably a chemical imbalance of some sort, but the cannabis seems to, how could you say, for me to sit up here? I guess that's what you could say. I swear by it, of everything. I don't go to the liquor store. I don't go anywhere. I just get my bag, and there we go. And it's helped me ever since. And also, I was not hooked to a lot of pills, but doctors were giving me a lot of pills. 2 sets of pills for this, 3 sets of pills for that. And it just got to the point where, I wasn't feeling nothing, because it's so synthetic. It just, you're just going through life like a drag. You're just present but unaccounted for almost. Actually, this is different. I never talked this much in my life in front of a TV. Anyway, I think that's all I got to say, because my mind just went blank there a little bit. Little drawbacks of smoking cannabis, but that's expected. At least it's...
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask... So I'm going to ask the next question, and we just did a bit of a rehearsal with this yesterday, so we're really well prepared. But we had a gentleman yesterday that was joining us, and he's going to come tonight to the session at TRU, and he, like Randy and John, are really inspiring, I think, for all of us. As a gentleman that was literally nearly dead a couple of not even 6 months ago, and he is present and accounted for. And part of the context of where these gentlemen live is in a second stage housing facility in the community, and many of the people that are living in their stage of recovery are using cannabis, and it's understood in the building that people who are using cannabis products, whether it's smoking, eating, however they're doing it, that's part of how they stay well, and part of it is that sense of community. But one of the questions that we talked about yesterday to bring up here today and hopefully provide some thought for consideration amongst you is what John and Randy see as how can cannabis be used as a way to assist people who have severe addictions? What are the ways that it can be used, and how is it used to assist people with severe addictions, even beyond your own experiences, but what you've seen? So John, how do you see cannabis being used to help people with severe addictions?
Yeah, well, over the years there, I've been working with Hughes and working with the people, and I've seen, like with alcohol is just a given, so many will use marijuana as a means to stay away from the alcohol. I do believe it's an accepted thing in Alcoholics Anonymous that odds are there's many of us that still smoke marijuana to keep their recovery intact. Okay, and I've also seen with the heroin addicts and the pill addicts that are around me daily, that I ain't seeing it with all of them, but those that I do see it with that will smoke marijuana as a means to kill off the urge, to get their mind off the urge, to relax and let go. Those are all things marijuana is known for, and they use it for those reasons. I believe it helps them. We're seeing success with them, and we're also seeing some go back to it, but during the time that they were off of it, they were more comfortable. They were more easy with themselves. And then some incident happens and boom, they're back into it. It has nothing to do with the lack of marijuana. It has to do with what happened in that moment for them to go back to it. And I truly believe that anxiety has a lot to do with why people are addicts. Anxiety can drive them to it, fear, all those things that are stepping stones towards a fall or a slip. And marijuana does help with every one of those areas, especially anxiety and stress. It helps you live and let live, or let go of what you're fearing and your anxiety and whatnot. And I've seen evidence of that daily. Today I seen it. Yesterday I seen it. Evidence of marijuana relieving anxiety, marijuana helping someone through their day. That's just something I've seen a lot of, and I want to share that with you.
Thank you. So Randy, you talked a little bit about PTSD and cannabis, and we heard it today with Zach's research, how it's being seen as a valuable tool. What are your thoughts on how cannabis can be used to assist people with severe addictions?
It's better than doing the derivatives type of deal. That's the way I think. I don't believe in the method of, okay, when I used to do heroin back in the 90s, I never went on the methadone or the methadose or anything like that. I went the cannabis way at that point in time. I've never touched heroin since. Other than that, what was the question again?
Just about how you see, I mean, in this climate right now, where it should be previously, if you were trying to get well and go into a treatment program, you wouldn't ever be able to use any cannabis. And even medical marijuana is it was a very difficult prescription to get a hold of. How do you see now that there's much more access to cannabis? How do you think it might be able to be used in a kind of housing setting, in a recovery setting? How would you see it potentially working?
Still say smoke it outside, like you but cannabis really helps. I mean, it just takes away all the cravings. You eat well, you eat more than well. Things just become more clear, and not so befuddled in your head or stuff like that. You know, there's one thing about this thing here, that's just a committee of assholes running around with a blank piece of paper trying to figure out what part of the alphabet to put it in. So I stick with what the heart says. So
Okay, perfect.
That's, yeah.
So I'm going to ask the one question. We talked a little bit about tolerance yesterday and the risk that it may not do what you need it to do in a long-term situation. Do you see any risks with the use of cannabis products to help people who have severe addictions? Is there some risks? We know that tolerance is an issue. You had a really interesting comment yesterday, Randy, about how to manage that in terms of just getting too familiar with the same product as a tool.
Yeah, with marijuana, if you smoke the same strain all the time, you're going to become immune to it. You're going to do nothing. So what I do myself is I'll get another breed and mix it in with it. What one's missing, the other one has. Just changing the chemical buildup of it, just that little wee bit. Even just adding one bud off of something else with your other, you can never really, what's the word I'm looking for? My mind just went blank again.
Get bored?
Wrong?
Huh?
Go wrong?
Nothing can really go wrong, no. You can't hurt yourself by mixing different weeds together to get what you're looking for. Because what works on one person will not work on another. So you have to find that happy medium. So you change the concept, the chemical balance yourself by just not adding other chemicals in with it, adding the same.
Yeah, perfect.
Adding a different plant to it just to make it that little wee different
That's perfect.
Which makes it so that you don't, you never get, how could you say, stale or?
Stagnant.
Stagnant, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
John, do you have some comments about what you think is there some risks attached to, because I think even here today we've talked about all its potentially glowing properties in helping people with various mental health and substance use issues. Is there any risks that you can see with using cannabis to try to exit your way out of a serious problem with substances?
Okay, well, what I'm going to speak of isn't so much more a risk as it is a detriment. And everybody knows that when you smoke a lot of marijuana and you're chronic, you're going to procrastinate. And procrastination can be detrimental to you, especially if you're in recovery, just starting it, and you're using it. Well, the procrastination that can come with that. Like, I'll put off till tomorrow this, or we're all known for that. But what I would suggest there is, if you're using it with someone who's just, their sole purpose is in the beginning of recovery to use it, then put support there. Not so much support, but push, where they say, okay, they'll understand that they know they need to do this, this, and that, but the procrastination from the marijuana is making them put it off. Well, you just have someone help push them towards what has to be. And that would eliminate that detriment of procrastination because you smoke a lot of weed. But that would be about the only risk. And then there are facts that some people, they cannot smoke marijuana. They get way too paranoid when they smoke it. Well, you'll know that immediately when you're first toke. You take that first toke, you'll know that about yourself. And then, well, then marijuana is not an avenue you can take. Other than that, that's about the only risks that I can think of.
Okay, I think that takes it. So thank you guys so much for coming up here with me today, and it's been wonderful, and I think our time is up. So thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Yeah, we'll take the seats off. Yeah, I'll take that guy. Perfect. Well, here's trouble. I've got two microphones in my hands, so here we go. Thank you very much to all three of you for sharing a very personal and very direct explanation, understanding of some of the more real-world applications. I think it's important to, as we're going through the summit, to provide different perspectives, different lenses, and to ensure that as an audience of professionals here, you're able to see things through different eyes. And by getting down to the street level, getting down to where people are living every day with the challenges and struggles of daily life, and how people are finding ways when things go very wrong to help bring themselves back to a place where there is health, where there is hope. And once again, just such a pride in our city to have an organization like Ask Wellness so that these fine gentlemen can be on our stage today with a story of hope and inspiration.